You are listening to the Dare to Love podcast with your hosts, Sonica Tinker and Christian Peterson, founders of LoveWorks. Hi, and welcome to the Dare to Love podcast. I'm excited you tuned in here today. This is Christian Peterson, and today I will be talking to you about feeling seen. And I'm going to ask you a few questions first that I invite you to consider. Do you feel seen? Do you feel seen in your relationship or your relationships? Do you feel that people around you see your value and your contribution? Do you feel seen for who you really are and for how hard you try to do well and be a good person? And do you feel that your partner sees you and appreciates everything you do to make him or her happy? And if you have kids, do you feel that your kids see you and your contribution and how much you care? Well, for way too many people, the answer to these questions is no, I don't really feel seen. As you know, Sonica and I work with hundreds and hundreds of people, both individuals and couples around relationships. And I cannot tell you how often we come across and people will tell us about how they feel invisible or lonely or not seen in their life in general and in their relationships in particular. And when we talk about feeling seen, I use that word feeling seen as a bit of an umbrella term that covers many other terms. Being seen and feeling seen is not just a visual act. It's really a feeling experience that you can feel all the way into your heart. And we might hear it described with other words like feeling heard, feeling known, or understood, or gotten, or appreciated, or validated, or received, or accepted, or feeling like you belong, or feeling connected. I know we could go into more detail with each of those terms, but I think they are, if not the same, then at least very similar and very related. I read a great article by Seltzer. He's a psychologist who wrote on Psychology Today. It was called "Feeling Understood is Even More Important Than Feeling Loved." And I would say feeling understood is part of feeling seen. And here's a quote from that article. Seltzer says, "Not feeling that others really know us, and I would say, or see us, can leave us feeling hopelessly estranged from the rest of humanity. It may well be that feeling understood is a prerequisite for our other desires to be satisfyingly fulfilled." And what I take from that great quote is that really when we don't feel seen or understood, as he calls it, it's almost impossible to feel completely satisfied or like your heart is full, or as he says, it's very difficult to have your other needs be met. And you might relate to this. I was just having a friend over for coffee this morning, and I was asking him, because I was preparing for this podcast, I was asking him, how do you relate to this being seen? Have you in your life felt seen, or do you now feel seen? And he said, well, this is a man who he came to with his wife to our workshop, so he had some advanced training, and he said, well, now after having done this work, I do feel seen, and my wife and I make it a conscious choice to work it into our relationship that we see each other and we be seen. So yeah, now I do quite well, and I absolutely did not used to feel seen. He said when I was in school or in high school, I didn't feel like one of the cool kids, and like I was on the cool teams, and in that it was very hard for me to feel seen by my peers. And when you don't feel seen, that too comes with many different expressions. You might think about it with different words, and certainly people we talk to us about it using different terms, such as I feel invisible, I feel isolated, I feel alone, I feel unappreciated, I feel not supported, I feel like there's no point to what I do. All those terms I would say are, you could say, related to, at the very least, or the same as even, not feeling seen. And another thing I'll ask as an example, my friend mentioned how he felt when he was in high school. We have a couple of young adult children. They're not really children anymore, but one of our kids is a junior in high school. And, we of course know many of her friends and the kids she grew up with. And it is still it kind of breaks my heart actually to hear how many of these young adults feel not seen in school. Our own daughter had that experience of coming from a smaller school in middle school where there was very tight-knit relationships. It was like she had family there, and whenever she came onto campus, people knew her. There were people who'd say, "Hi, how you doing?" And be noticing if she wasn't there and happy if she was there. And then she came into a huge high school after that, and she said something to the effect of, it's really difficult coming onto school where like nobody knows me, nobody sees me, nobody even knows if I'm not there. And that feeling of nobody even knows me if I'm not there, that really hurts. And it gives rise to, it's really easy from that place, it's really easy to go into feeling isolated and alone and even depressed. Many of the high school young adults that we know today are feeling seriously and genuinely depressed. And a huge part of that is not feeling seen and also not knowing on their own to reach out to be seen, not really having the skills or the courage to go deliberately for that. Sonic and I think, and based on our many years of work in the field of relationships and personal work, that feeling seen it's a human need we have. It is right up there, maybe a very close second to basic needs like having enough food, water, and shelter. Sure, I know we might not physically die if we don't get seen for a week, like we might with not getting water for a week, but we will begin to die on the inside if we don't feel seen or appreciated, or the other words I used. For the rest of this podcast, I'm just going to use the word being seen to cover those other terms as well. It's a need we have, and it really does need to be filled for us to function effectively in the world, in our intimate relationships, and for us to feel safe and loved and cared for, which are all different ways of feeling, happy, in good spirits, in good health. It's no secret anymore that if you feel prolonged levels of loneliness or depression or not being seen, that will definitely begin to take a toll on your overall health. The world is now full of humans who take medication for depression and loneliness, and I know there are other things going on in that domain, and certainly a large part of that is not feeling seen, not belonging, not feeling like I have a place or that anyone would even notice if I'm not there. So given that this is a need we have to get fulfilled, how do we go about that? Well, not very many of us actually will openly acknowledge that we have a need to be seen and validated and appreciated. You can just think about, when's the last time you went up to someone, your partner, your kids, a friend of yours, and you said to them, "Hey, could you just take a few minutes and really see me? Like really tell me what I mean to you, or could you just take a few minutes to really appreciate me and tell me what a great person I am and how much you see my contributions in my family and in the world." Would you do that right now? Like, when's the last time you did something like that? Well, for most of us, the answer would be, I have never done that, and I don't think I ever would ever do that. Certainly in my family, nobody ever did that. And, we're just not, most of us don't even think that that's an option. You could even go ask someone for that. So it's like we find ourselves in this human catch-22. Given on the one hand that this is absolutely a need we have to be seen, and on the other hand that we don't go for it deliberately. We feel too self-conscious or that it's bad or wrong or weak, so we don't go for getting the need met deliberately. That's a catch-22. I can't go for it, but I still have the need. So what do? Well, most of the time, we go for getting this need met in subversive, underhanded manners. And there are many ways to do that. You somehow have to fight to be seen. You might argue or yell or keep pulling on your partner or criticizing or nagging or, insisting somehow until your partner or the other person in question somehow sees you. If you get into conflicts, you might find that it's really difficult to let go of the argument until you feel that the other person sees your point of view. That's what we talk about as being understood. And this podcast here, I'm talking about it as being seen. It's like you can't let it go until the other person gets your point. So when you don't feel seen, or when you find yourself holding on to grudges, not forgiving, which is the same thing as letting something go and moving on in a good spirit. You might try to fulfill this need by withdrawing or stonewalling or going silent with the secret hope that somebody is going to come pull you out and say, "Hey, I notice you're not talking to me. What's going on?" And you might not admit that you'd like to be seen inside of that. But often that is one of the ways we try to get the need met to be seen, as we stop talking altogether, or we talk way the hell too much, or way too loud, or start yelling. Another way that we might try to get this need met is we act out. We do stupid things. We break things, or lie, or cheat, or steal. We might go use addictions to try to fill this hole. When we don't feel seen, it leaves a hole in our hearts. It leaves a void that isn't filled up. So that's where, in my opinion, where a lot of addictions come into play. I certainly used to do that. I used to smoke and drink and use other fun substances. And I can honestly say that what I was trying to do was to fill this giant gap in my heart that I had no other way, or at least I didn't know of any other way to fill them. So, when I could light up a cigarette or open up the next beer or have the next drink, I felt a momentary relief, as if that hole had been filled for just a little bit. Most addictions have at their roots that we're trying to fill some internal hole inside of us. So that's another way to try to go about getting seen. Another way that often shows up in relationships, if you don't feel seen in your relationship, is to have emotional or sexual affairs. Very often affairs like those happen not because I don't love my partner, but because I feel something is missing. I don't feel seen or appreciated or gotten or validated. So I meet someone else with whom I do feel seen. And all these ways that I just mentioned of going about filling the need to be seen, they all have very serious side effects. Emotional or sexual affairs, or addictions, or withdrawing and stonewalling, or yelling and criticizing, or throwing things, they all come with serious side effects that create their own problems. Now we have totally different problems or secondary problems to deal with, when really, quite often the problem is that I didn't feel seen or gotten. So how can you go about doing this in a more conscious way, in a better way, in a way that would actually fulfill this need consciously and without unpleasant side effects? So I'm going to give you a few simple tips for what can you do to help yourself feel seen. And then I'll give you some tips for what can you do to help someone else, your partner or your kids or someone else who's important in your life, to feel seen. So first, some of the things you can do to help yourself feel seen is, first, look for where there is appreciation in your life, where you do get seen, or you do get validated, or you do get appreciated. For example, recent example from my life. Yesterday, I was on a Zoom meeting, so I was in front of my computer, and Sonica brought me a cup of tea. She had noticed earlier on that I hadn't had time to pour tea on my tea because I had to start the call. And she came in ever so quietly, because I was already engaged in a conference. Ever so quietly, she just came in, put a cup of tea next to where I'm working on my desk. And I noticed that. I tell myself, yeah, that means I'm seen. So I later went and thanked her for that. So when I go and thank her for where she did see me, for where she did offer me something, it's like I take note inside and say to myself, yeah, I am seen. There was an example of someone noticing me. So when I say thank you for where I do get seen, it reinforces in myself that I have what I want and it helps to fill my heart up. We had another example actually a couple of days ago where, I really wanted to have sex, and Sonic and I played around a little with it, but Sonica said yes to it and was game for it, and I felt really seen and loved and appreciated by her saying yes to my advances. So I made sure to thank her for that. We had a wonderful lovemaking session, and afterward, I say thank you so much for saying yes to that. And in thanking her, of course, I offer her the gratitude that I have for her love for me and for saying yes, but I also give it to myself that, yeah, there's another example of my partner seeing me. So those are just simple examples just from our everyday life here. Another thing you can do to help yourself be seen is you simply ask directly for it. In our workshops, we do some powerful processes about where we help you or the participants seeing other people and being seen for real, like in a way that just reaches to the bottom of your heart. I remember the last time we did that at our Give Yourself to Love workshop. A man came up to me afterwards and said, actually, he had tears streaming down his face, and he was otherwise a very stoic man, and by his own admission, not someone who would display that kind of emotion normally in the public world. So he was kind of surprised himself. And he said, I think it's the first time in my whole life I have really, truly felt seen. Where I grew up, he said it was kind of a harsh environment. My parents would be very liberal in telling me that I was a piece of shit and would never amount to anything, which is obviously the opposite of seeing someone or feeling seen. And he said, and actually we later talked to this man and his wife, and their entire relationship opened up. His entire relationship with his kids opened up. Actually, I talked to his wife later, and she said, yeah, our teenage boys can't even believe how different he is. And it was from that experience. It changed him in a very short period of time, having that short moment of truly feeling seen. So point being, you can deliberately go for this. You can, certainly you can put yourself in a workshop situation like our workshops where we will help you to have that experience, but you can do this at home. You can do it with your kids or your partner. Simply ask for it. Would you be willing to tell me one or two things that you appreciate about me? That's a way to get seen. Would you be willing to tell me how you see that I'm a good man? Would you be willing to tell me how you see that I help around the house? Any such simple thing. Point is, ask directly for it. And I promise you, you might be surprised at when you ask in a good tone of voice and with a genuine desire like this, you are very likely to get a yes to that. And another thing you can do, which leads into the section about how you can help someone else feel seen, is you can do what we call provide what's desired or provide what is missing. Instead of waiting for, hoping for, begging for being seen by others, and sometimes feeling like they're not doing it, is you simply offer it. You offer what you yourself want to someone else, your partner, kids, anybody. And interestingly, in you offering someone else being seen, it tends to have you feel seen also. It has this magic, almost two-way street effect. When you help someone else feel seen, that fills you up. So some examples of that is you certainly appreciate others. You thank others, like the example I gave to Sonica. I thank her for the tea she brought me. We had another great example. This was actually from last Christmas. Our adult son, he gave us one of the Christmas presents he gave to Sonica is he wrote her a 4-page letter with everything he appreciates about her. And, he knows sometimes in life, so, there's nothing unusual in this situation, really. He's a young man going out on his own, finding his own way in life. And, his main attention is not on his mom and dad anymore, which in my opinion is just as it should be. And, sometimes Sonica in particular, she's really been missing him. And, at times feeling like wondering if he kind of forgot about us. And he totally didn't. He's just living his own life. And he knows this. He's a young man with a great sensibility to how other people feel. He's really brilliant that way. So anyways, he gave Sonika a 4-page letter of everything he appreciates about her, from everyday things like, I really appreciate that you made us put the phone away around dinner table, even though I sometimes hated it. And I really appreciate that we played games, or that, that we baked our own cookies and cakes and, had homemade food, and like all manner of things. And you could just see Sonika, it made her feel so seen that tears were just running down her cheeks as she was reading it. So you could write a letter to someone like that and tell them how much you appreciate everything they do, both big and small. Another simple way to have someone feel seen is you look at them, like you make eye contact. The kind of eye contact where you, with your eyes, basically saying, I see you. I know you're there. You mean something to me. So take a moment to make eye contact. I know we do this in our workshops too. We have people in the beginning, when we have people, both couples, or it could be strangers you've never met before. You make eye contact, and we are well aware that to some people that's pretty uncomfortable, especially if it's someone you don't know. But even for couples who've been married for 10 years, it's sometimes uncomfortable to make eye contact for more than a second. And we know in our workshops, by the time we say goodbye on Sunday, everybody can do it. No big deal. And most people really enjoy it because it comes with feeling seen and filled up and loved. So make eye contact for a few more seconds than you normally would. Great way to have you feel seen and someone else feel seen. Another way is someone feel seen, is you be curious about them. Be interested in them. Ask them questions about how they're doing, what turns them on or off, what's their next dream in life, how do they like their tea. It can be mundane or it could be big stuff about their life. But you basically take an interest in someone, and a great way to express that interest is you simply ask them questions. And then, this is the next point, and one that deserves a shout out on its own, then you simply listen. Listening to someone with undivided attention, while including eye contact is a good idea, is a great way to have someone feel seen, even though they might think of it as I feel heard or understood. And how I'm talking about it here, it's really the same thing. So to your partner, your kids, just let him talk and give him your undivided attention. Even if you're the busiest person in the world, if you take 30 seconds and you really listen to someone with undivided attention and with eye contact, they are very likely to feel heard or seen just by you doing that. Another thing I'll talk about a little bit about here, this is going to be a subject probably will be a subject for a whole podcast episode, is you say yes to your partner's bids for connection. Some of you might have heard that term before, bids for connection, bids for attention, or it comes in different terms. But when someone makes a bid to you, that means simple ways. For example, Sonika might say to me, oh, hey, did you see this thing I just found on Facebook? This happened actually just a few days ago. Sonika had found a really moving video on Facebook about, I forget the name of this nonprofit. A gentleman had started a nonprofit, the purpose of which was to provide clean water and schools in third world countries. And there was like a 10-minute little documentary invitation to make donations. And she had been really moved by watching this film. So she came to me and said, oh man, I was so moved by this. Would you watch this with me? That is a bid for connection. It's basically her saying, would you be willing to step into my world for just a little bit and share this world with me? And by me saying, sure, I'll watch that with you, she feels seen. She feels joined with, validated, loved. And actually in our situation, this could be a useful tip. Maybe you don't have time right there and then to watch a 10-minute video. And I actually didn't. The first time she told me, I said, I'd love to see that, but it doesn't work for me right now. So I did it the next day, and she felt wonderful about it. And actually, we loved it so much that we ended up donating some money to this nonprofit because it was totally worth it. So bids for connection can look like many different, can look in many, come in many different forms. Someone says, shows you something on their phone. Your kid is playing a computer game. You can join a bid if they say, oh my God, this game is so cool. That's a bid for connection. If you just step in there for a second, or, whether it's 10 seconds or 10 minutes, or you get caught up in it yourself, doesn't really matter. But by you saying, wow, yeah, show me, or that looks really awesome, that is a way to receive a bid for connection in a positive manner. So when someone makes a bid to you, accept the bid. Go to the bid and step into it. That's a great way to have someone feel seen. Touching someone is a great way to have someone feel seen. And like we talked about, feeling seen is not just a visual experience. It really is a very physical, whole body experience. And touch is a great way to do that. You walk down the street next to your partner, take his or her hand. That's a way to help them feel seen. You're cooking together in the kitchen. You put down your potato peeler and you go over and you give your honey a big hug. Or your kids, if you're cooking with your kids, go over and give them a big hug. Simple touch like that is a way to have someone feel seen. Sonica and I we are by now, we do it deliberately. We just build it into our day. We cross each other in the hallway. I stop her for a second, put my arms around her or my hands on her shoulders. I give her a giant kiss and look in her eyes. The whole thing takes 10 seconds. I promise you she feels really seen by doing that. Sit on, your partner is chilling out in front of the television, go sit on their lap. That is a way for them to feel seen. Make sure to touch. Another way you can do it is when you come home from work, or, if you come together after having been apart, is you say hi to each other a little more slowly than you normally would, as opposed to just, hi honey, I'm home, and you walk right past each other. You say, hi, how was your day? Or I love you, I missed you, it's great to see you again. And you make eye contact for 5 minutes, for 5 seconds, or 10 seconds, or 30 seconds. Give each other a big hug, look in each other's eyes. It doesn't have to take a lot of time, but it makes someone else and you feel seen. So those are some of the ideas for how you can feel seen and how you can help someone else feel seen. Basically, fill your own heart up and fill their heart up. And this whole podcast here, it reminded me of a movie I watched many years ago. It's called Shall We Dance? With Richard Gere and Jennifer Lopez and Susan Sarandon. And there's this scene, I don't even remember the whole movie, but I remember this scene I never forgot. So this is Susan Sarandon's character, whose marriage, I think, is falling apart. She's talking to another gentleman played by Richard Jenkins, and she says to him, why do you think it is that we get married? He says, it's passion. She says, no, I don't think so. I think it's because we need a witness to our lives. There are billions of people on this planet. So what does one individual life really mean? But in a marriage, you're saying your life will not go unnoticed. And I think there is great wisdom to that we want someone to witness our lives. It's as if our entire existence gets validated, gets to be real when someone else is a witness and they speak their witness to our existence. On the flip side of that, it's like if no one notices you, like we talked about with the high school kids, if no one even notices whether you're there or not, it is as if you don't even exist. So this really is a very existential need we have. And then the final fun thing I'll leave you with is I remember many years ago, I think, 2006 or 2007, I saw this great short film on YouTube called Validated. You can go look it up. I'll leave the URL for it in the notes. But just go to YouTube and look up Validated short film. It's this great film about, talk about getting validated is also when you need your parking ticket stamped. Say when you stay in a hotel, if you get your parking ticket validated, you can check out and park for free. But in this movie, when the customers go down to the parking garage basement to get their tickets validated, there's a young man there who validates them. And he says things to them like, people come over looking totally bleak, and he'll say to them, wow, you have a great face. You have powerful features. Have anybody ever told you that? That's a wonderful suit you're wearing. And someday someone is going to see what you're really about. And there's just a lot of fun scenes, and it plays with this idea of feeling validated. So go check that out. It'll for sure put a grin on your face and fill your heart up a little bit. And the last thing I'll say is, I want for you to feel seen. And I really hope you help people in your life feel seen. It's an absolute secret to lasting, prosperous, sensual, loving, harmonious relationships where you feel like you can take on the world is when you feel seen yourself and when you help your partner feel seen. So we want that for you so much, that you feel seen. And yeah, that's all I'll say. Thanks so much for joining me for this podcast. Really appreciate your presence here. And here's to all of us feeling seen. You have been listening to the Dare to Love podcast with Sonika Tinker and Christian Peterson, co-founders of LoveWorks. And hey, if you found this podcast to be valuable, would you hit the share button and go ahead and share this with your friends on Facebook, Twitter, or wherever your favorite hangouts are. Thanks so much for sharing the love.